Department of Social Work, University of Delhi welcomes you to the webinar on Ethnography for Social Work. The speaker for this session is Professor Vinay Kumar Srivastava, Director ASI. The webinar will begin shortly. We appreciate your patience. We request you to kindly mute your audio and keep cameras off. Please do not post chat messages. Opportunity to ask questions will be provided to you at the end of the webinar.
I welcome all the participants for this webinar on Ethnography for Social Work, organized by Department of Social Work, University of Delhi. Our head of the department, Professor Neera Agnimitra, have also joined. Before we begin and invite the speaker, I would like to give you a brief introduction of the speaker for today's webinar. Professor Vinay Kumar Srivastava is currently working as Director General, Anthropological Survey of India, Calcutta. Prior to this, he was working as a head of the Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. He also served as a principal of Hindu College, University of Delhi. He has published widely on issues related to anthropology in national and international journals. On behalf of Department of Social Work, I welcome Professor Vinay Kumar Srivastava for this webinar. I also welcome the participants who have joined us for this lecture, along with my colleagues at Department of Social Work, research scholars, social work fraternity, and all other participants who have joined. So far we have 196 participants who have joined us from all across the country. And as we will proceed, many more are expected to join this webinar. So before taking much time, I invite Professor Vinay Kumar Srivastava for his lecture on ethnography for social work. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
It is made up of two words, and ethno being the first one, and graphy meaning the other one. And if you break this, you'll come to know that by ethno we mean people, by ethno we mean culture, by ethno we mean popular, we mean folk. There's so many words which are used for conveying the idea of ethnography. But the most important thing that ethnography refers to a kind of writing on the people. Graphy referring to writing, so a kind of writing on a set of people, a kind of writing on a group of people, and it provides a detailed account of the people's life, understanding a total account of their life. What is that the people do? What is the meaning of their life? How they live, and so on and so forth. Sometimes we use the word a holistic account for this. Now, we use the word ethnography in two terms. The first is ethnography as a process. So we use the word ethnographic method, a process of collecting information, a process of collecting information which will eventually give rise to ethnography. That's the first meaning. So when we come down to the process, we are concerned with the methodology. What is the method of carrying out the ethnographic work? And the second term is ethnography as a product, ethnography as an outcome of the work you have done. So the first is the process, and the second is the product, what comes out. In fact, the anthropologists are supposed to have at least two things to their credit. One is that they should have done a lengthy field work with a community of people for a long period of time. There should be one, that you should have done a field work, at least one field work. And the second thing which the anthropologists are supposed to have to their credit is an ethnographic account. I have seen in many of the interviews when the anthropologists present themselves for a job, they are asked a question. And the question is, that, do you have an ethnographic account to your credit? Have you written anything on a community? And these two words, ethnography and monograph, they are used almost interchangeably. Monograph means writing on a community, mono referring to one, and ethnography writing on the people. And that should be the first thing that you should have done. And I have seen, being an insider in the discipline of anthropology and in the discipline of sociology, I have seen that if someone does not have an ethnographic account to his or her credit, the others start looking at him or her with suspicion, that you have not done what is required to be an anthropologist. You should have done a lengthy fieldwork. Therefore, you have two things here. Number one, ethnography as a process and ethnography as a product. What I would do is, first of all, I will speak to you about the process, then I'll come to the product, and then I will talk to some of the other aspects, like, for example, writing up. For example, the veracity of the ethnography. And especially in the present context, there's something which has come up, which is called cyber ethnography. So these are the things which have come. Now, let us ask here, and I am speaking this as a professional social anthropologist and also who had a training in sociology, that what is that the anthropologists or sociologists do? Anthropologists, sociologists, and it applies to social workers as well, we are observing human behavior. We are interested in the way the human beings live, wherever they are, whatever they are doing. We are interested in having an understanding of their life. What is that they are doing? Whether you are conscious of this or not, my submission is that we, anthropologists, sociologists, and social workers, are always observing. And here, observation is different from mere seeing or mere viewing or mere looking. We all look, we all see. But what anthropologists have is that they are always looking at the thing with attention. They are interested in knowing what it is. In fact, one of the most accepted definition of observation is that it is conscious viewing, meaning thereby conscious sensing, meaning thereby that we are aware of what we are doing, and we are trying to understand what it is. And we are making use of the five senses with which we are endowed. And our information is coming from the outside world, which we are constantly processing. In fact, I have done this in my life, and I tell my student to do the same thing, that every day you should write up your diary. And in this diary, you write up what all you saw, what all you observed, and your comments on that. And I always have maintained that we are always field working. That field work is not something which you would carry out when you go thousands of miles away from your native place. But field work is something which we are always carrying out. We are observing the people around us. And thus here, the question which came up, someone asked me this question, and I thought that I would answer this here. Someone asked me, well, what do we do these days when we are in lockdown, when we are not supposed to go out, when we can't do any kind of field work? What is that we should do? And my answer was that observe what goes on in your own family, observe the people around you, observe your neighbors as much as you can see them. Whatever is visible, you should observe. And in fact, I am very confident, to say that a number of anthropologists have written excellent works working on their own neighborhoods, working on their own families. And I'll give you a couple of examples to substantiate my point. There was a man who gave the term primary group, and he was Charles Horton Cooley, and he wrote this, that I got this idea of primary group after observing my own family, my own children. In fact, Cooley was the one, the author of the concept of primary group. He was the one who called family domestic laboratory, that you are always observing. And the underlying idea is what is happening in my family is happening in other families also, and therefore I would be in a confident position to generalize, to move out of that. Now this a remarkable example. Not only that, you can, if you just cross over to psychology, you will find the case of Jean Piaget, who observed his own children and came out with an excellent theory of learning. And just recently, I read an article on Mary Douglas, who is one of the most important anthropologists, a wellspring of the ideas. Some of the ideas, of her are extremely important these days, especially the idea of distancing, an idea of purity and pollution, and the idea of dirt. Now, these are the ideas for which we are reading Mary Douglas. And she was very autobiographical. She would always look into her own life, her own experiences. So therefore, as we say, and I am very fond of this phrase, which I have repeated umpteen number of times, charity begins at home. You start observing your own family, and you will come to know, without disturbing it, without disturbing the course of action, just observe what they are doing, and the social processes would be revealed to you. My point here is that we are always, continuously, we are observing. Anthropologists are trained to be observers, and this faculty of observation, this goes on. This is always there. We are always collecting information. Our studies are always going on. But when do these studies, which we are carrying out every day, when these studies become more formal, that is where we have to make a distinction. I am suggesting here, number one, we are always conducting our studies, and these observational accounts are going on, which we are interpreting and which we are putting into our own studies. The second is a kind of formal thing, that we go and conduct a formal study. And for this, one may use the word fieldwork. We use the word fieldwork. In fact, among the gifts of anthropology to other disciplines, we have fieldwork as number one and ethnography as number two. Two things we have given, and both these things collapse into what is called qualitative research method. And these methods are very popular, and as you know, that these methods are used across disciplines. So we use the word fieldwork. Now, there are two connotations here which we must keep in mind. The first connotation is that fieldwork is a very general term, and it mainly refers to two things. Number one, a study which takes place outside, which is not laboratory or library oriented, something which happens outside. And the second is where you are not controlling any variables. Let the variables come, let the variables present themselves, and you are looking at the situations in their normal context. So here, the distinction is One is one is field work with reference to the library work, with reference to laboratory work. And the second is no control over variable as happens in a laboratory, because experimentation is understood as where you control the variables. Now here the variables are acting on their own, and you're looking at how they are coming in contact and how they are working together. So, so two things which are here. Now, in the first context, you'll find that that social, the word fieldwork is used in other disciplines as well. Botanists use the word fieldwork for their work when they go out to some area to collect plants, or the zoologists use it, or geologists use the word fieldwork. The word fieldwork is used in a number of other disciplines. That's the first meaning of the word fieldwork, and we say that here it is a meaning which we share with others. But the second meaning is far more important than the first meaning. It is far more important for us, because that is how we carry out, and that is why, for specifying the nature of the second type of fieldwork, we use the word ethnographic fieldwork in order to distinguish it with the general fieldwork which is carried out by all others. Now, in this ethnographic fieldwork, there are certain particular things, and they in fact are the building blocks of what is called ethnography. The first thing is that we choose a group of people, we choose a context, we choose a community, we choose a society where we would go and spend a long time with the people. That's the first thing we choose. Now, how this is chosen? Where do you become interested? Now, this is something very, very interesting, that how people choose the communities they study. I think all fellow anthropologists, who are attending today's session, they have to ask themselves that why they chose to work on a particular community, what inspired them, why they spent such a long period of time. And I'm very proud of putting this before you, that the anthropologists have the distinction of spending years and years with the communities, living with the people in their midst for years and years. And sometimes, the relationship with the communities continues for almost ever. They don't leave the community. Now, I carried out my fieldwork when I was 28 or 29 years old, with a community of camel breeders in western part of Rajasthan. And today almost 40 years have passed. 40 or slightly less than 40 years have passed, and these people are still in touch with me. They often write to me, and whenever I get an opportunity, I go there. Now, these are the kind of relations which are built up, and so your relationship with the community remains. I want to tell you here that my first PhD supervisor, Professor Ellen McFarlane, used to refer to Nepal as his second home. He used to say, my first home is Cambridge and my second home is Nepal. He was the one who wrote a book on population and resources in Nepal, and he spent every summer, he and his wife and he used to go to the community and live there. Now, this is the kind of relationship, and this is the humanistic aspect. So my question here is ask yourself, why do you choose a particular community? Why you become interested? Are there accidental reasons for this, or someone suggests that you go and work on this community, or you go and conduct some kind of a survey and then you find that to settle down there and carry out your study? How the communities are chosen? Here I would like to submit that although in our discipline there are certain things which are said, the first thing which is said is that you should carry out your first field work with a community different from your own community. In fact, Louis Dumont, in 1978, in one of the interviews, he was asked that, do you want to suggest anything to the neophytes, to the new people who come and join the discipline? And he said, yes, I would like to tell them two things. Number one, never work on your own people. Never work on your own community. Go out, have experience of working with the other, with people who are different. And the second advice he gave was that look for a community of people who have not been studied, community of people who are relatively unstudied, or those people who were studied a long time back and the restudy has to be done, or they have to be studied freshly. So choose that kind of a thing. And this notion continues in the discipline of anthropology and also sociology. We look for a community which is different from others. And sometimes anthropologists are very enterprising. They would like to go to a difficult area, live in the inhospitable condition, have a lot of suffering, and but with resilience carry out the study. Now here, our point is very simple. Our point is that one should choose to work in a community wherever one is comfortable. There is no need for one to go thousands of miles away. You can choose a community right in your own neighborhood. You can choose a people in your own area. And there's no need for you to go far away. And this all depends upon your own understanding, your own preparedness, your own family condition. You see, I am reminded of what I learned as a student. I was told when I was in graduation, one of my teachers told me that Professor D.N. Majumdar, who was the founder of the Lucknow Anthropology Department, he used to tell as a student that carry out your intensive field work when you are not married. Because once you get married, you will not get an opportunity to carry out a long, uninterrupted fieldwork. And the same thing I read in the work of G.S. Ghurye, that carry out the fieldwork when you have less number of responsibilities on you, when you can be free, you can be with people. Now, if you look into the senior anthropologists, and I can give you my own example, the kind of fieldwork which I carried out when I was a young man or a young boy, I can't carry it out now. It's just not possible. Now, what I can do is bits and pieces of fieldwork. Go there for short time, collect the information and come back, which at one time was the American style of doing fieldwork, that you go to a community during the vacation, study it, come back and spend time writing up your notes, then go again and conduct the study, and bits and pieces you put it together. And by contrast to this, the American style of doing fieldwork, the British style was that go and live with the people for a long time, uninterruptedly. Go there and be there for not less than 1 year, and then you come back and write up your account. But that 1 year which you are spending with the people, in the midst of these people, it should be uninterrupted. Now, this was the British pattern. British pattern also added another thing to this, that it was the model of what is called solo fieldwork. Solo fieldwork means go alone. Do not take your boyfriend with you. Do not take your girlfriend with you. Do not take your husband or your wife with you, or any friend with you. You should be all alone when you are carrying out your fieldwork. Now, this was the view of Sir Edward Evans Pritchard. And in fact, I have read the same thing repeated by Professor M.N. Srinivas, that fieldwork should be a solo enterprise. You should go alone, and if you go, this is what Srinivas says, that if you go with your friend, if you go with your spouse, then there is a possibility that you would form what you call an encapsulated group. which means that you will be happy with your husband or with your wife or with your friend, and you will not venture out. You will not go and spend time with the people. When you are carrying out your field work with the community, it is expected of you that for the entire duration of fieldwork, you would be in the midst of the people, and you will try to organize your life in accordance with their life. So this is what is called living fieldwork, that you have to be with them. You have to learn their styles of living. That is why some people have written books which are titled Surviving Fieldwork, meaning thereby that when you go and conduct a study with the people, you have to live according to them. You have to eat the food they eat. You have to sleep on the floor as they do, and you have to be a part of their ritual, social life. So therefore, the change comes in you, and we say that field work is not just collection of information. Field work is much more than data collection, and it is much more than data collection because we are experiencing fieldwork. The entire thing is going inside you, and I would like to share this thing with you. And this is not just based on my own fieldwork, it is an experience of a number of other people. When we start our fieldwork, we are writing every day, we are collecting information every day, and we want to take out as much time as is possible for writing up our notes, so that we keep pace with the information we are collecting. But after, this is what I have experienced, and this is what others have experienced, after 6 or 7 months of stay with a people in their natural habitat, what happens is that you don't feel the need of writing, because you think that you already know everything. You are able to predict the event. You're able to say what is going to come next, and you note down things which are a little serendipitous. Serendipitous means that those which are some kind of a chance finding, certain things which are new, so which come up. Otherwise, you generally don't need to write that much, because you have become, and I will use a term which is quite popular in anthropology, you have become completely nativized. Nativization of the anthropologist, that you have become one with them. And here I'm reminded of a very famous statement from Henry Bergson. And Henry Bergson was a philosopher, and this statement is of 1903. And this statement is oft quoted in the writings on grounded theory approach. And this statement goes like this: there are two ways of knowing a phenomenon. There are two ways of knowing a phenomenon. One is going around it, and the other is going inside it. And the simple thing here, when you go around a phenomenon, you are conducting what is called survey research. And when you go inside it, when you understand it from inside, when you are with the people and seeing the whole thing happening, then this is called field work. And this actually is field work. So the anthropologists have certain kinds of submissions about it. The first submission is that the first fieldwork should not be for less than 2 years. Now, it was emphatically stated by Edward Evans Pritchard that you should spend at least 2 years with the community. This should be your first fieldwork. However, what you have to do is spend 1 year with the people, come back for your what is called desk work. You're making a distinction between field work and desk work. Come back to your university where you're working. Now reflect upon what you have done, discuss your findings with others, talk to them, okay, and try to analyze it, try to chance upon certain hypotheses, and then after spending some time away from the first field work you have done, you go back to the same community for another year. And when you go back to the same community for another year, you are checking, cross-checking the information. There may be so many errors which may have you have committed, and that you are correcting. Moreover, what is the great advantage of staying away from the field for some time? It is that you are able to distance yourself from this, and when you are able to distance yourself from this, you will be able to look at it more objectively. So you'll be able to look at your fieldwork more objectively when you're observing the culture at distance. I'm putting it in inverted commas. When you're looking at outside, I mean, the simple example would be that if you see me after 2 days, you may not be able to observe any change in me. But if you observe me, if you see me after 1 year, you will immediately come out with one thing: oh my God, you have grown old, or you have put on weight, or you have lost weight, or whatever. You are able to make the distinction, because change is occurring every day, but the change is imperceptible. You are not able to see it. And so when you are able to distance yourself from the field, from your study, you'll be able to look at the people more objectively and go back, and then you write up your account. However, your second study or your third study can be shorter, because in the first you have learned the science, the art of fieldwork, how to write up your field notes, how to process them. You have learned the entire art, and therefore after this you need not spend that long time with the community. Now, many of the anthropologists, and this is the second point, that we must have at least 2 or 3 studies to our credit. Don't be just happy with one field work, but carry out your second field work, carry out, if the things permit, your third field work, because all this will make you very comparative. Now, you have a large number of examples before us. Edward, Edward Evans Pritchard did work with the Newer and with the Shiloh. Come to our own country. M.N. Srinivas, the first work was with the Kurg, and the second work was in a village in Karnataka which came to be known as Rampura. Look at the case of Louis Dumont, who carried out a study with the Paramalai Kallar in Tamil Nadu, and later on went to Gorakhpur to conduct another study. Look at Jonathan Perry. His first work was on Kangra. He wrote a famous book called Caste and Kinship in Kangra, and then his second work was on Banaras, and his third work, which he has just completed, is on the industrial workers in the town of Bhilai. So 3 studies, having to his credit, because anthropology is a comparative discipline, and therefore I urge upon all my students and my fellow anthropologists that don't give up fieldwork, because fieldwork generates ideas, fieldwork generates your understanding. And the third thing which comes up is, which anthropologists have been saying again and again, that fieldwork is not just experiencing the other. Fieldwork is not just collecting a plethora of data. Fieldwork also leads to some kind of a writing, some kind of a text, which is called ethnography. And now I will try to link up the 2 things, the first being the process and the second being the product. I ask here a question. What is that we do during the course of fieldwork? We spend 1 year or so with the community, sometimes more than 1 year, and spending the time with the people. And I'm assuming that this is an uninterrupted fieldwork, even when you are carrying out fieldwork in your own community. There's a very strong tradition of carrying out your fieldwork in your own people, in your own village, in your own community. Now, when you carry out fieldwork in your own community, what has to be, you have to be conscious of, is that begin with a tabula rasa mind, meaning thereby, when you are studying your own people, you should tell yourself that I do not know anything about it. I do not know anything about them, and therefore I have to study these people with an open mind. Even your own community as an open mind. When this idea came, this idea which later on came to be came to be known as autoethnography. Auto means self, writing on yourself. When this idea came, the concept which became very popular was the concept of defamiliarization, which means that you should make the familiar things strange, as if you do not know anything about it. Even when you know, you do not know anything about it. You have to bracket your knowledge. You have to hold your knowledge in abeyance, that I know nothing about it. So it is something new which is coming up. So when this idea of defamiliarization came, I did not believe it. I did not think that it would be possible to do so. So I thought, why not do an experiment on it? Why not study my own family? Why not study my own mother? So my mother, who used to make a large number of paintings on the wall, during the time of rituals, and I thought of studying this because I knew that this art of making paintings of gods and goddesses on the wall, this tradition is going to end with her. Neither my wife nor my sisters are going to take it up. This is not going to be continued. And moreover, the calendar art has come. These pictures of gods and goddesses are available as calendar. You buy the calendar, paste the calendar on the wall, and then you worship it. So people will not be making these drawings of gods and goddesses on walls. So I thought, why not study it? Why not take my mother as a subject and study? And I started speaking to my mother. When I'll ask a question to my mother will start laughing. She would say, come on, why are you asking this? You have been helping me right from my childhood. You have been helping me, in the preparation of these paintings, in preparation of the colors. You have been helping me. So why are you asking this? And I told my mother, I said, look, this is a very serious matter. You please tell me what you know about it. And I told her that I know nothing about it, and absolutely suffer. And after some time, I found my mother became very serious, and she became so. So I was coming to the second part, that what is that we do during the field work? What is that we do? The first thing is that we collect the information and we write it. What we write it are the keywords. We carry a small notebook with us. Sometimes when notebook is not permitted, then you keep everything in your memory and later on you write it. So the first thing we do is we write the keywords, something we observe, some of the key things. Okay. These keywords which we collect during the course of our fieldwork every day, for which the term used in anthropology is scratch notes. They are called scratch notes. And this term was given by Simon Ottenberg. He was a German scholar, and he said these are the scratch note. One word, two word, keynote, half sentence, full sentence. Now these keywords need to be expended. In other words, you have to write a detailed account of what you saw, a detailed account of what you learned. So these scratch notes have to be developed. And so the second thing we do when we are in the course of our fieldwork is we write a detailed account of what happened every day. And so those notes are now becoming what are called processed notes. The second term is processed note. The scratch notes and the processed note. The processed notes are detailed account, sometimes running into several pages. And in fact, I submit here that when we are carrying out our field work, we should at least keep 3 to 4 hours every day for writing up our notes. Otherwise, everything will be forgotten. And this is something we should do every single day. Now, when field notes are being written, the information is being arranged systematically. That's the point I want to emphasize. The information is arranged systematically. Something I learned in the morning when I was conducting an interview, and something which I learned in the late afternoon, eh, this information may come together at one place. And writing up of the process notes is the beginning of the process of analysis. So in fieldwork, the analysis begins along with the collection of the data. Data collection, data analysis, data writing, and data interpretation. All these four things go hand in hand. They are a part of the same process. When we emerge from the field, we have several wads of paper which we have written, and these are the detailed accounts of what all we observed, what all we learned, what all we were told. So this is the process note. The third thing we do is, in the field, we read the processed notes. What we have written, we read. We read those notes critically. And when we read those notes critically, we ask questions. The questions which we are asking on the material we have written. Now, for these questions, we go back to the community and again ask them. So this process of going back to the people to seek an answer to that question, this goes on. So that is why we say that the anthropological fieldwork, it may be a new term for some of you, anthropological fieldwork is iterative. Iterative means going back and going forth, that you're asking the same questions again from different people. This is the third thing we do. And so what happens is that our notes keep on becoming better and better. Our notes become more and more enlarged. They become more and more detailed. The fourth thing we do is that we collect the local term, find out the meaning of those local terms, the significance of those local terms, and therefore we prepare what is called glossary of the word. This will also add to our linguistic skills. In fact, when we conduct our fieldwork, we must not depend too much upon the interpreter. Initially, an interpreter may be hired, but we should try to get rid of the interpreter at the earliest. In fact, I am quite fond of referring here to Gananath Obisikere, a Sri Lankan anthropologist. His idea that there is something called interpreter effect, by which he means that the interpreter will try to give a different meaning to it. And therefore, it is important that you learn the language so that there is no intermediary between you and the people. Sometimes the interpreters can also, they misguide you. So glossary will add to your understanding, which will add to your knowledge, and you will be able to acquire linguistic skills. Then tomorrow you may think of preparing a dictionary of the local language. Many anthropologists have done this. Suppose that dialect doesn't have any dictionary or any compendium, you would be able to do so. And lastly, what you do is, the fifth thing you do when you carry out your fieldwork is write your own diary, field diary, which is more or less an account of your existence in the field. It is very personal, and these diaries are not meant to be published. Although these diaries can be used for substantiating certain points in your work. So there are five things we are doing. We are collecting scratch notes. We are preparing processed notes. Number three, we are revising our notes. We are preparing log books on our notes, verifying these things. We are collecting the local words and the terms and their meaning. And lastly, we are writing our field diary. 5 things which we are doing. Ethnography results from these 5 things. But there is something above all these 5 things. Simon Ottenberg says there's something called head note. Head notes. He popularized these 2 words, scratch notes and head notes. Head notes are those notes which are there in your mind, the notes which are surviving with you. You have committed them to your memory. And when you are writing up your account, certain pieces of information which are not there in your written notes, which are there in your heads, they immediately come and you are able to write up. So these head notes are very important. If you have conducted a field work there and written about it, if you have conducted your field work and written the processed notes, I do not see any reason why you would ever forget it. The memories will remain. And the substantiation to this came from M.S. Srinivasa's famous book called The Remembered Village, which I advise everyone to read it. It's an amazing book and written entirely from memory, because the field notes had been burnt. Srinivas went, on a sabbatical to Stanford University to write up an account of Rampura, a detailed account of Rampura. And there was a lot of student violence at the time. In arson activities, the building in which his office was located caught fire, and all his notes were burned, and he did not have any processed notes with him. And it's a true story that one of his friends, whose name is Soltex, one of his friends just told him that, Srinivas, why don't you remember your village? And Srinivas started remembering the village, and the book resulted, Remembered Village, which actually substantiates the point that if you have done a field work, if you have written about it in the field, process note, so that the things have been internalized, there is no reason why you would forget it, and you will be able to write it. In fact, it was after Srinivas that the term memory ethnography has become quite popular. And memory ethnography means something which you write from your own memory. So your field notes which you have done there, which you have prepared there, they are the building blocks of your ethnography, the detailed account. But when you return from the field, you have in fact a wealth of data. My own understanding is that of the information you collect during the course of 1 year's field work, it is enough to generate not less than 4 to 5 books. Therefore, when you are writing up your ethnographic account, you have to choose some material from the work you have done, because an ethnography can't be an encyclopedic account. You can't talk about everything, but you focus upon certain aspects and keep other material for other things. That is why we have several books on the same community. I quoted Evans Pritchard. Now he has 3 books on the New Era, and all these 3 books resulted from field work which he had carried out with the New Era. You write this account, and this detailed account which you write, the ethnographic account which you write, this is an account of a particular community. This account is based on first-hand, face-to-face contact with the people. And now we have to move on to certain new kinds of things which are coming up. So if you if you look at the ethnography as a product, certain aspects we can state here. Number one, an ethnography results from a first-hand fieldwork. Number two, an ethnography is not encyclopedic in nature. It is not something which is including everything. An ethnography focuses upon a particular issue, a particular aspect, and other aspects are taken up in the subsequent ethnographies. The third thing is, an ethnography does not intend to generalize about human condition as a whole. An ethnography is an account of a particular community, is a detailed account, and it is some kind of a you know some kind of a holistic account of the lives of people pertaining to that thing. And it should be written so vividly, ethnography should be written so vividly that you move, the reader moves along with this. That is why writing becomes of great importance in ethnographic work. As a matter of fact, when ICSSR was planning for a research methodology course, a course which should be conducted in all the universities, all the research institutions, it thought of two kinds of methods, quantitative and qualitative. But it included the third thing in its syllabi. And the third thing was writing up, what is called paper clinic. Paper clinic meaning how you write up. You see, you may have conducted a very good field work. You may have been conscientious par excellence during your field work, and you have a wealth of data with you, which you have analyzed very well. You also have interpreted your findings very well. But if the entire work is not written well, it is of no use. And Srinivas noted in one of his books that there are cases of a large number of students, and Srinivas based this on his own experience. There are cases of a large number of students who do excellent field studies, come with wealth of data, but just because they are not able to write a well, the entire effort goes waste. And therefore, ICSSR thought that when you are planning a research methodology course, it should not only be with respect to how to collect numbers, how to collect, qualitative data, the attribute, but also some training in how it has to be written up. And I was so, because I was a member of that committee, ICSS committee, then I thought that we should organize writing workshops so that people learn. They bring their data, they bring their information, and then how they're able to write up. And writing is an art which has to be cultivated. Ethnography, in fact, puts a lot of emphasis on writing, and how this has to be written up. This is a separate issue which we can take up in some other webinar. Now, I'll not take much time now. My time is over actually. I'll just speak for 3-4 minutes more to bring in another part. We are, during the course of field work, we are collecting information on what people are saying. We are collecting information on what people are doing. And we are in a detailed manner writing all this is what is happening. But human interactions are not just confined to face-to-face talking. They're not just confined to interpersonal conversation. Human interaction can also take another form. People write letters. People write diaries. They are equally important. And then one should not forget that in the last 30 years or so, with the coming of the internet technology, we have moved on to creating computer generated, computer facilitated communities. And they are equally worthy of study. This domain of human interaction, this is equally worthy of study. In fact, I supervised one of the students, for his MPhil and then PhD, whose thesis was on Facebook. He was just conducting fieldwork on Facebook. You can conduct fieldwork on social media websites. Now, this is something which has come to be known as cyber ethnography, and we contrast cyber ethnography with the traditional kind of ethnography. One of the questions which comes is that in the present scenario, that when we are in lockdown, and it will bring about many changes in our thinking, many changes in our style of living. What would be the future of ethnography? This is one of the questions which is asked, that will there be this kind of a traditional ethnography? The traditional ethnography is one which is a product of living with people in their natural habitat for a lengthy period of time. This is what traditional ethnography is, where the main technique of data collection is observation, and observation is coupled with conversation, and at the same time we are advised to make use of certain other methods. There has to be some kind of a mixed approach. You can bring in as many methods, and that is why it is advised that when you have returned from your fieldwork, you should write an account of how you collected your information, which techniques and methods you used, and what were your improvisation, which new things you found, how you collected the information when people were advising you not to write, when people were advising you not to take any photograph, when people were advising you against the use of your voice recorders or tape recorders. So how you managed there, what kinds of improvisations you did. So what were the methodological experiments you did? And that is why now this is something which did not happen with survey research, but it happened with fieldwork, that when the anthropologists returned from their field studies, they started writing on what they did during the fieldwork. And one of the first books which came in India was by Professor Andre Bete and T. N. Madan. It was an edited volume called Encounter and Experience, which is a very valuable book. And what they thought was that, look, fieldwork is a sine qua non of anthropological, sociological, social work professionalism. If there is anything which is regarded as kernel of anthropological work, it is field work. There's a very famous statement, comes from the, yes, I will just like to finish another 4 or 5 minutes or so. So, we were talking about the fieldwork being as a unique thing, and in fact, we say that each fieldwork is unique, and each anthropologist has his own characteristic. And there's a very interesting material on the differences between female field workers and male field workers, field work in your own community and in the other communities. So we are asking here, what would be the future of ethnography? I think that, notwithstanding the fact that ethnography does not help in generalization, it does not help you in arriving at common propositions about human condition as a whole. The great strength of ethnography lies, the great strength lies in telling about a community in all its nuances, in all its details, giving an overall account of the community. And the underlying assumption is that what is happening in this community, similar kinds of processes must be happening in other communities. The second step is that after we have collected an account of one community, we can always subject it to comparison with the other communities. That is why I said right in the beginning that we must have at least two or three, ethnographic accounts to our credit. Now, what will be the future here? Well, the traditional notion of community is certainly not going to die out. We will still go to the people, will still try to live with them, irrespective of the inhospitable conditions which may be there. We'll still try to learn. And at the same time, we would make use of, we will make use of the other. Hello. We will make use of the cyber ethnography as well. In fact, we should not make a ironclad distinction, cyber ethnography as different from traditional ethnography, because even cyber ethnographers say that we have to make a distinction between the online persona of the person and offline persona of the person. What I am when I am writing on the Facebook, what I am when I am contributing to WhatsApp, and what I am in reality. So in fact, we have to bring this together. Therefore, in future, I think both traditional ethnography and this cyber ethnography, working on the other kind of materials which we are producing, it is bound to come up. The second thing I think is that there will be an increase in the number of auto-ethnographies, one's own community, one's own people. More and more people, I'm sure, will be writing on their families, writing on their household, writing on their mothers and their grandmothers. When Mary Douglas wrote on her grandmother, many thought that it was rather strange. But now, more and more people will try to write on their own condition. And along with this, the autobiographical account, anthropological accounts of their own autobiography, they are likely to increase. This certainly will not mean that anthropology will come to an end. Sometimes people say that anthropology will not be anthropology if we are not able to contribute to the understanding of tribal communities. This is what they said. And we say that now contemporarily, we have 732 tribal communities, scheduled tribe. Now, this is the most recent list. I just did a book for Sage in which I counted the tribal communities in India, 732. Some communities which have synonym, they have to be kept out of this list. Now, many of these communities have not been studied. And so who will study them? It is not easy. And this is the great advantage of studying one's own community. It is not for any one of us to go to a tribal area in northeastern part of India and carry out a study with the help of the translator. If we have to learn the local language there, we need more time. Why not have the anthropologists from that area? Why not they work on their own communities? Why not they compile compendia on their own people? Why not they collect dictionaries on their own people and compile with this? So thus, our submission is that let people who are already aware of the linguistic aspect, those who will not have problem in maintaining and developing any kind of a rapport, let them carry out their own studies, provided we all agree to the canon that we have not to take anything for granted. We have to keep an open mind. We have to begin with the idea, that I do not know a social fact unless I study it. Here I'm quoting Emile Durkheim, that I don't know it. So once we begin with this idea that we are going to understand our own situation in the same way as we understand a situation which is very different from us, then we are committed to the typical anthropological work. So we will have the study of our own community. We will have more and more studies of our own families, our own life, our own individual. And these ethnographies will be of great value. They will be of great use. Now, there is last thing which I want to state here. And this question is about the veracity. This is about the truthfulness. When you are reading an ethnographic account, sometimes you quip, oh my God, this is what they have been doing. And then you ask here, has the author noted it correctly? Is the information right? How to check the truthfulness of the work, whether it is correct or not? In fact, I tell my student, and I also try to do it, that every social scientist should read. And when I use the word social scientist, I'm including anthropologists, sociologists, and social workers. We should try to read at least one ethnography every month. And I've tried to subscribe to this. This is what I do. At least one ethnography. Because ethnographies are more or less like fictions, like novels. Although they are not fiction, but they are like fiction, highly readable. At least one. Because in order to survive in the discipline, you need a comparative understanding of different societies, not just one society you have studied. If you ever look at the work of Claude Lévi-Strauss, what would impress you the most is the amount of ethnographic knowledge this man had. Although his own fieldwork was not so good, his own fieldwork, which he described in his famous book called Tristis Tropiques, it was no match to Malinowski's fieldwork with the Trobriand Islanders, or Evans Pitcher's fieldwork with the communities in the Sudan. It was no match, or Srinivas's own work in Rampura. But the amount of information he had, you read any of his work and he will give the examples of different societies, comparing different things, because you know that each society has been able to maintain its own culture. It has been able to maintain its own ways of living, and these ways of living have survived even when the changes have occurred. Thus our grip of the ethnographic material is extremely important, and therefore we should not only read others' ethnographies, but we should also write ethnographies, whether it is of our own families or of our neighborhood. But I think, and as a senior man, I can say this, I think that we are very shy of writing of accounts. For example, what happened in the lockdown period. You know that this is a situation which is sometimes called a natural experiment. In fact, I spoke about it to a seminar which was organized by Dr. Sunita Reddy. This is an experimental situation in the sense you are passing through this. So, what is happening in your own house? And this kind of a first-hand account is very important. It can be ethnographic as well. Bring in as many situations, as many contexts as possible. There is no need in an ethnographic account to have a large sample. In fact, the ethnographers rarely use the word sample because they don't have this concept of sampling. They want to study everyone. And please don't think that if there's a large society, you will have a better ethnography in comparison to where there are few people. After all, there can be excellent ethnographies of single individual. And if you don't believe me, then have a look at Marjorie Shostak's work on Nissa. Look at Freeman's work on Muli. Look at Oscar Lewis's work on Pedro Martinez. Just one individual, the life of the entire individual. After all, it is from the life of the individual that you are learning about the entire community. Now, the question of veracity still remains. Now, how will you answer this question of veracity? Some people say that, well, when you are reading an ethnography, you will be able to find out where there is exaggeration and where there is truthfulness. You will be able to find out. You have to be the judge. But there's something more important than that. And this actually is that the ethnographer has to be as truthful as possible. The ethnographer should give an account as he or she actually observed. There should not be any modicum of exaggeration. There should not be any modicum of undermining certain thing. Whatever it is, the truth has to be told. And that is where the problem comes up. And the problem is with respect to that all communities, and these are the problems which I think all ethnographers face, and all those anthropologists who are attending here, and those who have long field studies to their credit, they would agree with me that this is the problem which comes up. None of the communities you have studied will have everything which is in proper order. There may be inequality, there may be malnutrition, there may be oppression, there may be certain practices which are against human rights, for example, witchcraft, and many things you observe when you are in the field. And then, if you are going to write all this, how the community is going to react to this? I want to close this entire thing raising a very important question. The question is that today, whatever we write on other communities, whatever we write on other people, is not going to remain just in the libraries or on the desks of the Western readers. Those times have gone away when we could write anything on the communities, publish it, thinking that this material would never be read by the people themselves. That was the time when Christoph von Führer Hammondorf could title his book called The Naked Nagas. Now things have changed. Now people whom we were studying at the time, they are now educated. They know the meaning of anthropological work. They also know that these anthropologists have not understood us correctly. They are trying to write on ourselves, on themselves, and therefore the whole aspect of writing has to be taken very seriously. And these are the ethical issues which come before all anthropologist. Whether we should keep the name of the community as it is, should we use a pseudonym, which information is to be kept and which information has to be kept concealed, what should be confidentiality and what should be anonymity. These ethical issues have become much more important. I cannot think of any book in research methodology which ignores these aspects of ethics. So ethnography raises these ethical issues. Now, who will be able to provide an answer to these ethical issues? I think the ethnographer himself or herself, because the ethnographer is aware of the actual context, and the ethnographer has to take into account the situations therein. One of the answers which is given is that that today we are working with people who know about all this. Why not take the people into confidence? Why shouldn't the ethnography be a joint collaborative effort? People also know that this is what you are writing, and after you have done your draft, after you have written your work, why not allow the people to read it? Why not the people to comment on this? People who can do it, I mean the educated ones who can read your work, why shouldn't they comment on your work, so that they know how they are being depicted? This kind of a joint collaborative effort where ethnography is a joint enterprise, this view is very important, and I think it must be given a lot of importance, because the people with whom we work are our equal. They are our co-locals. Co-local means that we live with them. This may not be the case. Co-locality may not be the case in cyber ethnography, but here in the traditional ethnography, we live with them for a long period of time, and therefore there's no harm in taking these people into confidence and telling them that what we have understood, sharing with them, pointing out what their follies are, presenting before them what kinds of situations are there. And this will actually help in the growth of both the people who are studied and the ethnographers who study them. With this, I will, in one sentence, I will summarize: let the ethnographic experience be equally enlightening for the ethnographers as well as for the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your insightful information on ethnography. I request participants, if you have any question, you can post it in chat. And then
Abhishek,
yes, sir.
Abhishek, hello
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Abhishek. Abhishek, I can't hear you.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
Abhishek, your voice has gone down. Come closer
Okay.
to the system. We can't hear you.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, uh, for this insightful information. I request all the participants, if you have any question, please post it in chat now. And then I request sir to address the questions. Few questions are already there on chat. So I request Dr. Meenu Anand to put those questions forward before the sir so that he can answer it.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thakur. Am I audible? Am I audible to everybody?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thakur. Professor Srivastava, thank you so much for enlightening all of us about ethnography. You really spoke from your heart, as always. Sir, we have a few questions. Participants have actually raised a few questions already. So, with your permission, can I please put across some of
Yes.
the questions?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, our colleague, Dr. Atul Pratap, actually raised the question of what kind of measures do you suggest to minimize our own bias when we are doing our field work, particularly in case you can make any suggestions regarding field work during this COVID-19 period. Thank you, sir.
Well, I want to tell you that we prefer the term likes and dislikes. Hmm? That we all have our likes and dislikes. And since we are a product of culture, we, internalize many kinds of preferences, cultural preferences. The most important thing, and this is a good question which has been asked. The most important thing is the ethnographer has to know himself or herself. You have to know what your biases are. You have to know what your likes and dislikes are. And I'm sure when you are doing your fieldwork, sometimes you get agitated. Sometimes you lose temper. And you know why you are losing it. So thus an ethnography is a way of, ethnographic method is a way of discovering oneself, to know what kinds of things do we have in mind. Surely, if you bring in the idea of reflexivity, it is very well known that we cannot make our preferences, our likes and dislikes, our biases and prejudices suffer. This is something we just cannot do it. In fact, our subjective preferences begin with the choice of the topic. Why do you take a particular topic? Why not take some other topic? And then the kind of situations the fieldwork present before you. Many of the field workers have been males, and they have been studying societies from the male point of view, just because these societies were sexually segregated and they did not allow these male anthropologists to have a free interaction with their women. And therefore, whatever they collected was from men. Even I suffered in my own study. I remember my PhD Viva Boards examination, where one examiner who happened to be a woman. This examiner, she asked me, "Well, in your entire work, there are no women. You're only talking about men." And then I had to say that I was able to speak to women, only those women with whom I was able to have some kind of a putative kinship. I was able to have some kind of a fictive kinship, like they became my sister, or they became my mother. So these were the women whom I was able to speak. Otherwise, my entire information about women is based on observational data rather than on interview data. So these are the kind of problems which come, and there's no harm in stating the limitations of one's fieldwork. The Pandit of qualitative research is a man called Howard Becker. And Becker wrote an excellent paper, which I'm sure some of you may have read it. It's called "Whose Side Are You On?" And the basic theme of this paper is, whose side are you on, is whose point of view you are putting forth. Who were your respondents? Who gave you the information? Were there methods available to check and cross-check the information? Therefore, you have to be aware of yourself. State about yourself. At one time, the author was nascent. In ethnographic account, the author was nascent. Author did not exist, and we just talked in terms of positivistic scientific ways. But in contemporary ethnographies, a large number of which are reflexive in nature, they talk about the author as such, and the author is describing who I am, what are the problems with the field situation. So you have to present yourself. So my submission would be that you have to not minimize your biases and preferences, the likes and dislikes. You have to confront them and bring them in the work. Thus to say that these are the kinds of, this the bundle of the the preferences with which I approach, and that is how I was able to handle this. After all, the baggages which you carry, the baggages like, for example, uh, uh, gender, region, these are called social baggages which you carry. These social baggages will not become safer. They will always be there. So in ethnography, it is not only that you are understanding the other, you are also understanding yourself. Now coming to the second, about the kind of work you can carry out during this period of COVID-19. Actually, I don't know whether I'm doing the right thing. What I have been doing, and I think I will be doing in future also, is that for me each day is new. For me, each day presents new kinds of challenges, new kinds of situations. And each day, whatever I am reading, I am reflecting upon it. And these reflections have to be noted down. Thus, what I have done in my life. In fact, I was telling in the other web seminar, there are only two things I have done in my life. One is I have taught, and the other is I have written. And I have written whatever I felt like writing. I have written my responses to certain situations. I keep a diary with me, a daily diary. I write down whatever my points are. If they are not for publication, they're only for my own understanding. What I think about it, what my thoughts are. Like people used to write on the margins of the books when they're reading. They write on the margins of the book. The same kind of thing. One person who asked me here that in during this time, what kind of a fieldwork we can carry out in the COVID-19. Now, I have already proposed the answer. My answer is that during this time, in case you are motivated, and in case you don't want to while away your time by parking yourself before the television, either listening to the news or to a large number of films, if you are not doing this, I think this is the right time to observe your own family, observe your own neighborhood, observe your own people around you, what they are doing, how they are coping up with this, the kind of discourses which are coming up. The other day, yesterday, PC Joshi was giving a lecture he's a professor of anthropology at Delhi University, is giving a lecture on COVID-19 and the lessons we learn as anthropologists. And it just occurred to me that the small thing, the small concept like social distancing, okay, just see and study at the level of your own family how social distancing is being observed by us without changing the situation. Okay. What is social distancing at the level of outside and what is social distancing at the level of home? He was talking about fear, that we are all in a state of fear. Fear meaning thereby, oh my God, I may also be got. I may also be positive. People are not going for investigations just because they may feel that they may be found positive, and once they are positive, it will be the entire family which will be stigmatized. It will be sealing. It will be the kind of consequences. This kind of a fear, and I personally think that if there is a field which has remained ignored, is the study of fear, institutionalization of fear. When we use the word institutionalization of fear, mean fear in the system, fear which is generated in the system. So suppose I sneeze in public, people will be fearful. I remember when swine flu was spreading, I was traveling in metro and someone sneezed, and how people started running hither and thither. This is the kind of thing. You can have so many things and study. You can write on your own experiences. You can write on how media is looking at it. You can write. It will be a great thing. In fact, I'm going to speak about it in a couple of days. It would be a great thing that tomorrow, you know, maybe after 30 years, 40 years, when you have to tell your children and your grandchildren the story of COVID-19, what would that story be? When you have to tell them, as our fathers and forefathers used to tell about the stories of the partition or stories of the pandemic those times. So what kind of a story will you tell? What are the memories? It will be a good idea to just focus on something and work on it. Just don't think that field work is to be done only when you go out with a cap and with a binocular, with a lugged with a tape recorder. It's not this. Fieldwork can be conducted on the website. Look at the social media, analyze the social media. Fieldwork can be conducted on your own neighborhood. Hmm? And in fact, just to complete that answer, you know that COVID started coming into news. This term COVID-19, it was given by WHO on 11th of February this year. But the cases of COVID started coming from early December. Okay, and and I really became interested in it in the month of February, after the first case was diagnosed. This was, I think, end of January, 30th or 31st of January. And I am in fact working on 4 things simultaneously. And someday I'll come out with short papers. One, I am working on coronavirus and globalization. This is one. The second thing I'm working on, coronavirus and intimacy, the intimate relationship, and especially with respect to conjugality. The third thing which I am working on is and collecting information on coronavirus and death, and especially how the dead are being treated. I collected some material on how the dead are being treated in Italy. And the fourth thing I'm working on, how coronavirus can help us in understanding the dialectics of the individual and society. So 4 areas which I have taken. Similar way, in a similar way, you can take your own topics. You can choose your own topic. The material is in plenty, and from where the material will come? The material will come from newspaper. The material will come from social media. The material will come from interactions you have with your family member, with your friends on telephone, on WhatsApp. All this material has to be used. So material is in plenty. The only thing is that you need some kind of an analytical framework. What is that you want to look at? You can look at the what is called the walking class, which is a new name for the Mazdoor class, walking class. You can work on gender issues. You can work on children. You can work on anything with respect to this. Choose your topic and work on it. Okay. Look here. We say in ethnography that each bit of information is valuable. We say in social sciences, in sociology, social work, and social anthropology, we say nothing is trivial, nothing is frivolous, everything is meaningful. So whichever information you get, incorporate it, but at the same time, you should keep an account of the source of information, from where it has come, and you will come out with the paper. In times to come, I'm telling you, a large number of books are going to come on this phase. A large number of journals are going to do it. My own organization, I just learned from one of our officers in Mysuru, that they are going to start a series of lectures on coronavirus. And tomorrow, all these lectures will be compiled and information will come. So this is the right time to conduct this study. I use this word that this is a natural situation which is happening, natural catastrophe which is happening, and it needs to be studied, notwithstanding the fact that these are moments of trial, moments of trepidation, moments of tribulation, but this is worthy of study. We must study it to the core and try and don't, but tomorrow, we will repent that it was happening and we didn't study. And the best thing is to study your own household, even if there are 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, how the social construction is being done. After all, COVID-19 is also having a social construction. You can look at in case you are interested in biological aspect, you can look at the genetic profiling. This question is often asked, that are we genetically stronger than the other population? You can work on that. Okay, right? So there's no dearth of topics. Yeah, Abhishek, any more questions?
Yes, sir. Thank you so
Yes,
much. There are actually many questions.
Of course, you can ask me.
I would like to ask, sir, you have thrown light about the future of ethnography, and you've also shared about cyber ethnography. So we have Preeti Jha, Dr. Ravinder Singh, and few more who actually would be very grateful, like all of us, if you can share a bit more about cyber ethnography.
Well, cyber ethnography is not at all a different species. Cyber ethnography is a continuation of the traditional ethnography. The only thing is that what is the domain on which you are working? You see, when you look at the traditional ethnography, what is traditional ethnography based on? Traditional ethnography is based on what is called the interactions between people who are co-located. That's the major thing, that you go and live with the people. Whereas here you are working on individuals who are technologically inclined, and this is not a face-to-face relationship. You are working on the textual material which is generated through computers, and this material is the trace of human interaction. Thus, cyber ethnography will not be different from the traditional ethnography, except for the kind of material you are making use of. I'll give you an example. There was a long debate which was going on the social media on CPF to GPF, from Contributory Provident Fund to General Provident Fund, the case which was going on in the Honorable Supreme Court. So the long debate was going on. Now, all this is the information which is coming, and I was very closely, very avidly, I was reading all this information. Now, this information could be subjected to analysis. Now, this cyber ethnography is concerned with the information which you are having. But I would argue here that you can always combine cyber ethnography with traditional ethnography. Suppose you try to contact the people whose information you are collecting through computer generation. You combine it with their offline persona. Then you will be able to combine these two things together, the traditional ethnography and cyber ethnography. Okay. My submission is, do not treat cyber ethnography as a different species altogether. They are different only in terms of the kind of information which is being used. Yeah. Further.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, our colleague Dr. Archana Kaushik, she wishes to know, is reflective writing limited only in the methodology section, or should also be included alongside our findings and observations?
Subjective writing. Um,
Reflective writing.
Yes,
Say it
sir.
again. I have not understood the question.
Sir, she writes, R is reflectively writing limited only
Well,
in the methodology section, or can it
look
also
here.
be
I'll
included
tell you
alongside
something.
findings and
Yes,
observations?
I tell you. I do not know if you are aware of a man called Harry Walcott. Harry Walcott is the author of a book called The Art of Fieldwork, and he is also the author of a very important book, which I think all those people who want to write up should read. It's called Writing Up Qualitative Research. Now, Harry Walcott has also written an excellent piece on what is called Chapter 2. Now, generally, what happens in our thesis, in our doctoral thesis, and also in our MPhil thesis, what happens is that we have a chapter called Survey of Literature, and in this we also talk about how the information was collected, the methodological profiling. Walcott's idea is that do not have any in any thesis the chapter on survey of literature. You do survey of literature as a pre-PhD student, and the methodological chapter is not needed. In fact, in your own thesis, which is word limited, I think a PhD thesis should not exceed 80,000 words or so, or at the maximum it can go to 100,000 words. So what he's saying is that you incorporate your methodology in your entire work. In the similar manner, whatever you have read, the literature you have surveyed, that also should be integrated with the entire thing. Taking clue from this, I would say that your reflexivity, your understanding should not just be limited to the chapter on methodology in case you intend to write. Okay. Rather, it should be interspersed throughout your work. It should not just be limited to one place or the other. So you should be present. I would say you should be present all over, including what you're calling your findings. Now, my submission is that when you write a PhD thesis, I think you are under the magic wand of your supervisor. The supervisor says, have this chapter, you have this chapter, and you go accordingly. But when you are writing a book of your own, I think that you should tell your story rather than what people have done. Therefore, methodological chapter, survey of literature is not needed. But your book should show that at each level you are present. At each level you are there. So I am understanding the entire thing from your perspective, from your eyes. You should not be latent, you should not be nascent. All right?
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, our research scholar Indusmati wishes to know, since we are many of us working in more than one community, so how do we actually conduct ethnography when we are working with multiple neighboring communities? And also, if I may be allowed, I would like to club this question with another one where our scholar is asking that we have very limited time for data collection while we do our PhD. So like this, the entire time frame for doing PhD, if we spend couple of years in one community and understand them in detail, then probably the entire time frame is going to be prolonged. So can you please, throw some light about, these two?
Well, there are two questions which have been asked here. The first question is about the neighboring communities. Well, when we do work on multiple communities in the same neighborhood, it could be one field work. These multiple communities in the same neighborhood, they are not isolated categories. One community is interacting with the other community. You see your field work as one rather than fragmenting it or truncating it into different. See it as one, see how these communities are are interrelated. This is my answer to the first question. People have done it. Margaret Mead has done it. That there are several communities you study who are in the same contiguity, who are in the same neighborhood. Coming to the time dimension, look here. I come from a discipline where where field work is regarded as sacrosanct. In my discipline, whether it is the discipline of sociology, whether it is discipline of social anthropology, in our discipline it is said, number one, the first year of your doctorate you spend in collecting your secondary information, in finalizing your topic, in preparing your research questions. Second year of your PhD should be spent in the field. For the entire year, you should be carrying out your field work. And the third year should be spent on writing up your work. And you already know that writing has already begun when you were doing your field work. This is what I tried to say. My submission has been that one of the major differences between survey and fieldwork is, in survey, it is a linear approach. You collect the data first and then you submit the data to analysis. Whereas in fieldwork, the data are collected and analyzed simultaneously. Your pre-analytical phase has already begun when you are writing up your field notes. And so analysis is being built up. So 1 year is enough for writing up your entire thing. Now, but suppose if the fieldwork requires little time. After all, that is also true, that you can't afford the luxury of being in the field for 1 year, 1.5 years, or 2 years, where it is limited. You have to come back and give your finding in a month or so. What is that you do in 30 days? Then you have to rely upon certain other methods of data collection. One of the most useful methods of data collection is what is called focus group interview. And it has really yielded very good result. The other approach could be other kinds of group interviews. Focus group interview is one example of group interview. There can be other types of group interviews. But whatever the time you have, 30 days, 40 days, 45 days, whatever time you have to be in the field, and you will be able to collect a lot of information in this time as well. I would submit that information is not only being collected by asking questions, by observing, by making use of your faculties, but information is also generated when you are writing up. Because writing up means that you are analyzing, you are raising questions, you are providing answers to that. Both these processes have to be combined. And Margaret Mead used to say, and I'm remembering her, Margaret Mead used to say that in case you do not write up your field notes quickly, they are likely to become cold, meaning thereby you will not be able to remember them. So organize your entire work with reference to the time at your disposal. If the time is 1 month, make it as focused as possible. There's a word which we use in research methodology. It is called funnel down. Funnel down. Funnel down means make it very specific to the work you are doing. Do not bring too many things, because if you bring too many things, then you will not be able to do justice to it. The other thing you have to remember is keep a distinction between your understanding and the people's understanding. Whether it is working on the cyber material, whether it is working on the localized communities, whether it is working on the textual data or the observational data, whatever it is, we have to make a distinction between what I understand by this and number two, what people are understanding by this. And we make a distinction between actor's point of view and the observer's point of view. Of course, there are technical terms which are used for this. Actor's point of view, what is it the people say? And what is your understanding of this? And this must be kept separate. And when you are writing up your account, then you should say, in writing up your account, you should say, this is what the people say, and this is what my understanding is. All right? That's my
Thank you so much.
answer to this question is that What you have to work on is a function of time. I learned as a PhD student many years ago under the supervision of Professor Andre Witte. I learned three things. Number one, the first is the principle of the economy of time. Every research is time bound. Second is the principle of the economy of words. Every research has to be communicated in certain number of words. You can't have liberty with it. You know, articles are have a word limit, and you should learn to write this. And the third is economy of the references. You can't read up everything which is available in the world. You can't simply read it. And look here, I tell my student, you read only the literature in English language. What about literature in other languages? There are several, traditions of research, and you can't read up everything. Therefore, what is very important against this backdrop is your own originality, your own ideas. Yeah. Furthermore,
Sir, thank you
Right,
so
sir.
much. In fact, there are
Thank you.
many more interesting questions, but because of the paucity of time, I'm afraid we will not be able to take any further questions. So over to you, Mr. Thakur. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir, for answering most of the questions. And now I request Professor Sanjay Bhatt to come and give a concluding remark for this webinar.
Thank you, Abhishek. Sir, good afternoon. There are some people to whom you always want to listen, and Vinay ji is one of them. When I came to this university 27 years back, um, I heard him around 20 years ago, and I'm listening him on and off whenever there is an opportunity. There are good number of participants touching more than 200, and some of profile I could see. They are from law, anthropology, social work, sociology, even a medical social welfare officer from SK Hospital and Odisha, Chhattisgarh, large number of people. Uh, I do not have words to thank Vinayji. He has been always a friend to the department. He always came on the one call to department to address the students, and we are highly indebted to him. We are obliged that he shared his knowledge with us and with the young generation of the researchers. So, on behalf of the department and my own, I I offer my best wishes to Vinayji, and hope that he will continue to the journey of research, teaching the students the journey of research and how to do research. Thank you, Vinayji, for being with us, and
uh,
thank you, participants,
thank
to
you
be.
very much. Thank you very much. There's something I said in the beginning, and I would like to work on that. And for this, I need the help of your department. Is to have some kind of a forum where three disciplines, sociology, anthropology, and social work, can meet. Because, and this is what I said in the beginning, that when Dr. Thakur asked me, I gave the topic social work, ethnography for social work. And then my investigation told me that there is no separate ethnography for social work. The disciplines are so close, and they have such an affectivity that it becomes really difficult, and it will be rather imposing something from above, like the Procrustean approach. There's something imposed from above, that there is one concern of all of us, and that concern is to understand human behavior, human institutions, so that we are able to create a world where we live with equality, justice, and with good life. This is what we are. If we three of us are concerned with that, and fieldwork has been our basic thing. Social work is very well known for conducting fieldwork, so is anthropology, so is sociology. Why can't we all come together and have this thing? And since I happen to be in a position where I can initiate some of these things, we would organize something of this nature where three of us come together pool in our perspective and have some kind of an approach for understanding human beings and their condition, their predicaments, you know, as as correctly and in as much detail as is possible. Finally, I like to thank. I really want to thank from the core of my heart some of my very dear friends who joined. Professor Papa Rao is there. He is a great friend of mine, and I'm so happy that he stayed for the entire duration of 1.5 hours or so. Which I, and also Naresh Kumar Vaid, who is as old as I am, maybe a little younger, and he also stayed on. Itishri Padi is there. Now she's a great friend of my family from Odisha. So I'm so happy to see. And Saroj Bala Malik, I mean, Saroj Malik, who was from Hindu College. So I'm really happy that you could all come and join. This is the great advantage of webinar, that people all over the world can join. Something which can never happen in seminar. So webinar gives this opportunity of bringing
Exactly.
people and together. And I am finally really grateful to Professor Agni Mitra for arranging this thing, and to Dr. Thakur for this opportunity. Well, we will stay in touch, and whatever little I can do for your department, I will be always available. Please write to me.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you
And
very much.
thank you so much, all the participants, because the session went off really well. And some people we had to remove it forcefully to maintain the overall quality of the webinar. So I also apologize to those people whom we had to remove. Thank you so much. I thank Professor Neera Agnihotria for always motivating us to organize, to do different things for the department. I thank Professor Sanjay Bhatt, the senior professor, Dr. Archana Kaushik, Professor Sanjay Roy, our research scholars, uh, social work fraternity, and Dr. Minu Anand, who have taken an effort to collate all the questions. And thank you so much, all the participants, for your patience, and you have really cooperated well to make this webinar successful. Thank you so much, everyone.